The wedding happened faster than it should have. Not because of tradition, not because of celebration, but because everything around him moved at the speed of authority. When he decided something, it didn't feel like a choice anymore. It felt like gravity. She stood in the center of it all like someone misplaced. White fabric, soft lighting, careful arrangements, everything looked like a dream from the outside. But inside her chest, there was only noise. Questions that refused to settle, revenge. That word still followed her like a shadow. And him. He stood at the far end of the room, calm as ever, dressed in a perfectly tailored suit that made him look even more untouchable. People approached him carefully like he was something fragile and dangerous at the same time. But when he looked at her, really looked at her, everything else disappeared for a second. Then he turned away, as if it meant nothing. As if she meant nothing. That was what confused her most. Because if this was revenge, why did it feel so controlled, so deliberate? Why did nothing about him feel impulsive or emotional? Revenge was supposed to be loud, messy, visible. He was none of those things. He was precise. After the ceremony, she was taken to his home. Not a house in a state that felt more like a statement than a place to live. Long hallways, silent rooms, glass walls that let in too much light and not enough warmth. He didn't touch her. He didn't even act like a husband. And yet, she was now legally tied to him. That first night was the hardest. She stood near the window of her assigned room, watching the city glow in the distance. Somewhere behind her, he moved quietly in another part of the house. No urgency, no curiosity. Just calm routine, like this arrangement was simply another item in his schedule. At midnight, she heard footsteps outside her door. She froze, a pause. Then the door opened, but only slightly. It was him. He didn't enter fully. Just stood there, as if even crossing the threshold required permission from something unseen. "Do you need anything?" he asked. The question caught her off guard. It was so normal, so ordinary. And that was what made it unsettling. "No," she replied carefully. "I'm fine." He studied her for a moment longer than necessary. His gaze moved over her face like he was memorizing something he shouldn't need to memorize. Then he nodded. "Lock the door," he said simply, and then he left. No explanation, no emotion, just control. She sat down slowly after he was gone, her mind spinning. If this was revenge, why protect her? Why care if her door was locked? Why look at her like she was something he had almost lost before? Days passed in this strange rhythm. He was never cruel to her, never openly cold, but he kept distance like it was a rule he refused to break. He left early, returned late, spoke only when necessary. Yet every movement he made seemed aware of her presence in the house, as if she had become part of his environment without permission. And still, there were moments, small ones, when she accidentally dropped a glass and he appeared within seconds before anyone else could react. When a visitor spoke to her too sharply and the conversation ended abruptly afterward. When she thought she was alone, but later realized he had been there, always just out of sight, watching, not like a stranger, like someone who couldn't stop himself. One evening, she found herself in the library of the estate, trying to distract her thoughts with books she wasn't reading. The room was quiet, except for the faint ticking of a distant clock. Then she heard it, a page turning somewhere behind her. She turned slowly. He was there, standing near the shelves, holding a book he wasn't looking at. "You don't sleep much," he said. It wasn't a question. "It's difficult to sleep in a place that doesn't feel like mine," she replied before she could stop herself. Something shifted in his expression, so small she almost missed it, like her words had landed somewhere unexpected. "This house can become yours," he said quietly. The sentence should have sounded generous, but the way he said it made it feel personal, like it already belonged to her in a way she didn't understand. She studied him carefully. "You say things like that," she said slowly, "but you don't act like a husband." A pause. The air between them tightened. For a brief moment, his calm cracked, not fully, but enough to show something underneath. Something old, something sharp. Then it disappeared again. I never said this was about being a husband, he replied. And that was the moment her fear changed shape, because revenge was supposed to hurt her. But whatever this was, it felt like he was holding himself back from something far more dangerous than anger. And she was starting to realize she didn't know who he really was at. Oh. After that night, something subtle changed in the house, not in the structure. Not in the routines, but in the spaces between them. He was still distant, still controlled. Still, the man who spoke like every word had been measured before it left his mouth. But now, there were fractures, small, almost invisible ones, like a glass surface beginning to show hairline. Cracks under pressure. She noticed it first in the mornings he started appearing. Earlier at breakfast, not sitting with her at first, just arriving, standing near the window, checking his phone or speaking briefly to staff. But always there, presence without proximity, control, without explanation. One morning, she dropped a spoon. It was nothing, just a small metallic sound against porcelain, but within seconds, he was in the room, not walking, not entering slowly. Just there. As if he had already been nearby. His eyes scanned the table first, then her face. "You're okay?" he asked. The question was immediate. Too immediate. She nodded slowly, watching him carefully. "It's just a spoon." A pause. He exhaled once, barely noticeable, and stepped back. "Be careful," he said, returning to his original position like nothing had happened. But she saw it, the reaction that didn't belong, the instinct that moved faster than thought. That wasn't obligation. That was concern. Later that afternoon, she went into the garden. It was one of the few places in the estate that didn't feel like it was built to impress. Quiet trees, soft wind, a small fountain that ran constantly, like it had nowhere else to be. She sat on the stone bench, trying to clear her mind. That was when she heard voices. Not raised, just tense. She turned slightly and saw him near the edge of the garden, speaking with one of the staff members. His posture was calm, but something in his tone was firm enough that the other man kept nodding quickly before leaving. She had seen him give instructions before, but this felt different, more personal, more precise. When he turned and noticed her watching, he didn't react immediately, just held her gaze for a second longer than necessary. Then he walked toward her. "You're outside alone," he said. "I wanted fresh air," she replied. A pause. Then, softer than usual, "You should tell someone before you leave the house areas." "Someone?" she echoed lightly. "Or you?" That made him stop. Just for a fraction of a second. But it was enough. Because she realized something important in that pause. He didn't correct her. He didn't deny it. Instead, he said, "It's not about control." But his voice didn't fully convince even himself. That night, she couldn't stop thinking about it. The way he reacted when she was startled. The way he always seemed to know where she was. The way he never let distance become danger. It wasn't just protection. It was awareness. Deep, constant awareness. Like she had been part of his world long before she ever agreed to enter it. The realization unsettled her more than fear ever had. Because fear was simple. This was familiarity without explanation. The next evening, she found herself in the library again. It had become a place she went when she needed silence that didn't feel like isolation. Books lined the walls, old and heavy, like they had been waiting for years to be read again. She pulled one from a shelf, randomly, and sat down. Minutes passed. Then she felt it. That familiar shift in the air. Not sound. Not movement. Presence. She didn't turn immediately this time. "You keep doing that," she said quietly. A pause, then his voice. "I wasn't trying to interrupt you." "You didn't," she replied. "I just know when you're here now." That line made the room feel different. He stepped further inside, not close, but visible. "Is that supposed to bother me?" he asked. She closed the book slowly. "I don't know what it's supposed to do," she said honestly. "Nothing about you makes sense." Silence. Then he spoke again, but softer this time. "Most things don't make sense until you understand them." She looked at him directly. "And do I?" That question hung between them, longer than usual. For a moment, He didn't answer, and in that silence, something in his expression changed again, not mask slipping completely, but shifting just enough to reveal what was underneath. Something tired, something restrained, something that had been waiting a very long time to be seen. "You see more than you should," he finally said. "That's not an answer," she replied, a faint pause, then almost quietly, "I know." And for the first time since she had met him, she was certain of something, whatever story he was living in. She was not a stranger to it. She was the reason it existed at all. The house felt different after the truth slipped out. Not physically, nothing had moved. Nothing had changed its place, but the atmosphere between them had shifted into something fragile, like a glass surface holding too much pressure from underneath. She no longer walked through the halls as a wife who didn't understand her husband. She walked through them as someone trying to solve a history she never knew she had, and every step made her more unsure of what was real. He gave her space that day, too. Much space. No meetings interrupted her path. No silent presence appeared in the corners of rooms. It was as if he had stepped back deliberately, allowing her thoughts to fill the silence he usually occupied. But silence, she realized, was not comfort. It was confrontation. By evening, she couldn't take it anymore. She found him in the study again. This time, he wasn't pretending to work. He was simply sitting at the desk, hands loosely folded, staring at nothing in particular. Not waiting, not distracted. Just prepared, like he knew she would come. "You were right," she said as she entered. He looked up slowly. "About what exactly?" he asked. She stepped closer, stopping just beyond the edge of his space. "I do look at you differently now," she admitted, "and I don't know if that's a good thing." A pause, then he stood. Not quickly, not defensively. Just rising as if the moment required honesty more than posture. "That was never my intention," he said. She let out a short breath, almost a laugh, but there was no humor in it. "Then what was your intention?" she asked. "Because from where I stand, you knew me. You watched me. You built a life around something I didn't even remember." His eyes held hers steadily, and for once, there was no avoidance in them. "You think I did this to control you," he said quietly. "I think you took away my choice." She replied immediately. That landed between them. Hard. Clean. He didn't deny it right away. Instead, he nodded once. "You're not wrong," he said. The honesty surprised her more than any lie would have, but he wasn't finished. "Then you're also not seeing the full truth." She tightened her grip on her own thoughts, trying to hold steady. "Then show me," she said. That was the moment everything broke open. He moved away from the desk, walking slowly toward the window. Outside, the city lights were beginning to glow, distant and indifferent. "I didn't marry you for revenge," he said. She stayed silent because she already knew that wasn't the real confession. "I used that word because it was easier," he continued. "Easier for who?" she asked. A pause. "For everyone who asked why I couldn't let go of something they never understood." She frowned slightly. "You're not making sense." He turned back toward her. For the first time, there was no controlled distance in his expression. "I was there the day your life changed," he said. Her breath caught slightly. "I was there before you ever knew what losing safety meant." He added. Her mind tried to place the words into something logical, but nothing fit cleanly. "That's not possible," she said again, softer this time. "It is," he replied. "You just don't remember me the way I remember you." Silence filled the room again, but this time, it felt heavier, like something had finally been placed on the table that couldn't be taken back. She took a slow step forward. "If that's true," she said carefully, "then why didn't you come to me then?" His expression shifted just slightly, "Because I wasn't allowed to." The answer didn't clarify. It deepened the mystery. "Allowed by who?" she asked. He didn't answer immediately, and in that hesitation, she saw something she hadn't seen before. Not power. Not control, but conflict that had lasted far longer than her presence in his life. "I made a promise," he said finally. "To who?" She pressed. A pause. Then, quietly, "To the part of your life I couldn't save." The words settled into the room like a weight neither of them could ignore. She stared at him, searching for something familiar in a man who suddenly felt like he had been carrying her entire past alone. "You didn't marry me out of revenge," she said slowly. "No," he admitted, a beat. "I married you because I ran out of ways to stay close to you without losing you again." That was the confession. Not loud, not dramatic, but final in a way that changed everything that came before it. And for the first time since the wedding, she didn't see a man playing a role. She saw someone who had been waiting far longer than she had ever known. Not for control, not for revenge, but for a second chance. She didn't even remember giving him once before. After his confession, nothing went back to normal because normal no longer existed between them. The truth didn't bring clarity the way she expected. It brought imbalance. Now she knew there was a past she couldn't remember, a version of her life where he already existed in the background. But knowing that didn't automatically turn confusion into trust. If anything, it made everything more fragile because memory she didn't have still didn't feel like consent, and love she didn't remember still didn't feel like hers. That morning she avoided him, not in anger, more in uncertainty. She stayed in the garden longer than usual, watching the wind move through the trees like it had no responsibility to explain itself. That feeling matched her thoughts too closely. When she finally returned inside, she found him in the hallway, waiting, not blocking her, just there, like he had been for a long time. "You've been avoiding me," he said. It wasn't an accusation, just observation. "I need time," she replied honestly. He nodded once. "I know." That was the problem. He always seemed to know what she needed before she said it, but knowing didn't erase what he had done. "I don't understand you," she said, stopping a few steps away from him. "You say you loved me before I even remember meeting you. You built my entire present around a past I can't confirm. How am I supposed to trust that?" His expression tightened slightly, but not defensively, like he expected this question. "I never asked you to trust blindly," he said. "You didn't have to," she replied. "Everything around me already moved without asking." Silence stretched between them. Then she added more quietly, "Do you realize how powerless that feels?" That question landed deeper than the others. He looked down for a moment, and when he spoke again, his voice was quieter than usual. "Yes. Just that. One word. No defense. No justification." That honesty unsettled her in a different way, because it meant he wasn't disconnected from what he had done. He understood it. And chose it anyway. "You're not denying it," she said. "I can't," he replied simply. A pause. Then she asked the question she had been avoiding since the beginning. "Was any of this about my choice?" His answer came after a long silence. "No." The word hit harder than anything else he had said. She stepped back slightly, her breath tightening. "Then how is this love?" she asked. "If I didn't choose it?" For the first time, something cracked in his expression. Not control, not composure, but something closer to pain. "I never said it was perfect," he said. "That's not an answer," she replied. He took a slow step forward, then stopped again, careful not to close the distance too fast, as if even movement needed permission now. "I didn't build this to trap you," he said. "I built it because losing you once taught me I couldn't survive a second time." Her voice softened slightly, but not in agreement. "That sounds like fear," she said. "It is," he admitted immediately. That honesty created a strange silence, because fear was easier to understand than manipulation, but it still didn't fix the core problem. She studied him carefully now, not as a mystery, but as a person standing too close to something unresolved. "If I walk away," she said slowly, "what happens?" He didn't hesitate. "Nothing happens to you," he replied. "That was never negotiable." "And you?" she asked. A pause, longer this time. "I would lose you again," he said simply. The weight of that sentence sat between them like something irreversible. Not dramatic. Not exaggerated. Just real. She looked away for a moment, trying to steady herself, because part of her wanted to believe him, and another part of her couldn't accept that love could exist in something she hadn't consciously chosen. "You never gave me the full story," she said finally. "I know," he replied. "Why?" That question made him pause again, and when he answered, it was quieter than everything else he had said so far. Because if I told you everything at once, you wouldn't just question me, he said. You'd question yourself. That hit differently, because it was already happening. She wasn't just questioning him anymore, she was questioning her own life, what she remembered, what she didn't, and what might have been missing in between. I need to understand everything, she said firmly. He nodded once. Then I'll tell you, he said, a pause. But not to convince you. She met his eyes again. Then why? She asked. His answer came steady. Because you deserve the truth even if you decide to leave after it. And in that moment the power dynamic shifted again, not because she trusted him, but because, for the first time, he wasn't trying to keep her. He was preparing to lose her honestly, and somehow that made the truth feel even more dangerous than the secrets. The truth came in pieces, but this time, he didn't hide any of them. No more carefully controlled answers. No more half-explanations meant to protect his image or soften the past. He understood now that she didn't need a story shaped for comfort. She needed reality, even if it broke everything. That night, he took her somewhere she had never been inside. The estate before, a quieter part of the householder, less modern, almost untouched compared to the rest. The hallway lights were warmer here, the walls filled with photographs and small details that didn't look like they were designed for guests. They stopped in front of a door he had never shown her. This is where it started, he said. Her chest tightened slightly. He opened it. Inside was not luxury. Not power. Not the version of him the world knew. It was simple. A room filled with old memories folders. Notebooks and photographs carefully preserved over time. Not arranged for display. Just kept like someone afraid to forget. She stepped inside slowly. You kept all this? She asked quietly. Yes, he replied. She picked up one of the photos. It was her again, but older than the earlier ones. A moment caught candidly, her laughing at something off camera, unaware she was being seen. This doesn't feel like business records, she said. It's not, he answered. Silence settled between them. Then she turned toward him. Tell me everything, she said. And this time he did. Not in fragments, not in avoidance, but fully. He told her about the first time he saw her, not in the dramatic way stories usually begin, but in something far quieter. A moment she didn't even remember, but he never forgot. How she had said something simple, something small, that stayed with him longer than it should have. He told her how life pulled them apart before anything could even begin. How years passed, how distance should have erased her from his mind but didn't. And how, when fate brought her back into reach again, she wasn't the same person who remembered him. And that terrified him more than anything, because she didn't just forget him, she forgot the part of her life where she had been safe around him. I didn't come back to take your choice, he said softly. I came back because I couldn't watch you disappear from my life twice. Her voice trembled slightly. So you chose marriage, she said, because it was the only way to stay close? Yes, he admitted, a pause, and because I was afraid if I waited again, I would lose you for good. That honesty sat heavily in the room. She looked away, processing everything at once. You never gave me space to decide knowing the full truth, she said. I know. He replied immediately. No defense. No correction. Just acceptance. That alone changed something in her expression. Because for the first time, he wasn't trying to justify himself. He was just standing in what he had done. I should hate you for that, she said quietly. I wouldn't blame you. He replied. Silence. Long. Unbroken. Then she looked at him again. And yet I don't, she admitted. That moment didn't fix anything, but it shifted everything. Because it meant the story wasn't as simple as love or betrayal. It was something messier, something human. She stepped closer, just slightly. I don't remember what you remember, she said. And that's the hardest part. He nodded. I know, he said again. But I remember enough for both of us, he added softly, until you decide what you feel. Her breath caught slightly at that. Because for the first time there was no pressure in his words. No demand. No ownership. Just patience. And that scared her in a different way, because she realized something she hadn't allowed herself to admit before. If he truly let her go, she might finally understand what she felt without being forced into it. She looked around the room. Again, a life she didn't remember, a love she didn't choose consciously, a man who had waited longer than she could imagine, and then she turned back to him. "You said you loved me since forever," she said quietly. "Yes," he replied. A pause. She took a slow breath. "Then start again," she said. "Not as someone who owns my past, but as someone who wants to earn my present." Something shifted in his expression, subtle but real. Not relief. Not victory. Something closer to hope. For the first time, he nodded without hesitation. "Okay," he said simply. And in that moment, the story stopped being about revenge, control, or forgotten memories. It became something new, not guaranteed. Not fixed, but finally honest. A love no longer hidden in shadows, but finally learning how to exist in the light.